favorite segment of the week. I love looking forward to. I mean, it's between the NFL picks and the fantasy football bit that we do on Fridays. Yeah, Friday's always a great day. I hope you all enjoy your Fridays. I know I enjoy mine. It's nice to know the weekend is in front of us, and we've got all that football, college football, and pro football, of course, on Sundays. And then, of course, we've got the World Series getting started as well. So throw that in the blender if you like. So, certainly a lot going on. And the NBA is underway, as they say, although a rather large gambling scandal out there as well that's kind of tainting the start here of the NBA season. Well, welcome aboard, everybody. It is Friday. It's the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital. It's our live Friday show where we talk all things fantasy football. Today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Box Drop Syracuse. And let's bring in our fantasy insider. He talks with us every single Friday live at 10:30 from rotowire.com. It's the one, the only Joseph Bartle. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. A bit of a different setup for me today, so I'll be muting myself to make sure the echo isn't happening when we guys are talking. But yeah, I mean, you're right. We're heading towards the sports equinox as well, too. I think that's next week where we have interesting deals at RotoWire. They'll be happening for that day exclusively, which maybe we'll talk about next week. But yeah, I mean, let's not talk about the World Series. It's going to be the Dodgers in 3 if it's possible. It's a joke that the baseball allows it to be that way. Yes, I'm talking as a Brewers fan, but otherwise, football is going to be interesting too. This week with Buymageddon, I'm really calling it 2.0 because Buymageddon 1.0 was week 5. We had the Falcons, Bears, Packers on bye. And then 3.0 Buymageddon is next week when 4 teams of consequence are also on bye too. We're going to be in a 2-week, I would say, blender of sorts here with difficult fantasy decisions to make.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. All right, go ahead, Boy Green. Why don't you take the first shot today?
Yeah, that definitely feels accurate. So sometimes we dive into our worlds because we have multiple fantasy football leagues or our shows. So you guys sometimes get a sneak peek behind the curtain, and I'll get to that part of it in a second. But let's put a couple of front-facing things here from our league, and there are a couple of trades, Joe. So you'll be Joe Bartle, trade evaluator extraordinaire. You and your perfectly coiffed hair and bright blue shirt, which is brightening up my day. I really appreciate that. All right, let's go here first. We had a trade between America's team and Saquon Hurts. America's team trading away receiving Woody Marks and Caleb Williams in exchange for Alec Pierce. Your thoughts, Joseph?
Yeah, I saw this initially and I thought, oh, it's just a repeat of Christian Kirk for the Denver Broncos defense from a couple weeks ago where here's junk on junk. I liked Woody Marks at various points this year. I still think if we're requiring is the wrong word. If we value backup running backs that can be relevant starters at some point in the year, Rachaad White's a perfect example now where he's been a multi-week starter for the Buccaneers. And I would imagine this next week as well, too, until their bye week. Like that's Woody Marks can be that, but also he's a tier above that group because he's already theoretically more talented than the guy that he's sharing the backfield with. And there's very few backfields that seems to have some sort of value or consequence to that. Well, okay, great. If the Texans are, let's just say, the 25th best offense in the league, do you want to have that sort of back? Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears in that same sort of mix. In even 12-team leagues like this, there is value in that, but it definitely has a ceiling that's capped. Good news is Alec Pierce has basically a ceiling capped every week. I've talked about him on a couple of the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube videos or the Waiver Wire podcast on Monday, saying, hey, if you need a wide receiver 3 or flex, you can do a lot worse than a guy like Alec Pierce, who's gotten, I think, 5 20-yard receptions in the 5 games that he's been healthy for this year. It's just that he doesn't score touchdowns, and he really only is the deep specialist for that team. It's a great offense, but really Alec Pierce is much more like waiver wire fodder. The bigger deal out of this is that you get Woody Marks and Caleb Williams, and I think Caleb Williams rest of season can have some fringe quarterback 1 utility, and to get that for a guy like Alec Pierce, who I don't think will be on a roster in fantasy for much past 2 weeks, I think it's very good. It's a very good trade.
All right, let's get another trade in here. Let's flip to this one. Also happening in our league. Sunday Sprinters, Jamie, the FedEx guy, of course. Chopped him his prime. Great fantasy football name. A+ on that, Courtney. And Jonnu Smith and Breece Hall for Rachaad White and Dalton Kincaid. Joe Bartle, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is Breece Hall for Rachaad White and Dalton Kincaid. Jonnu Smith probably can be dropped. I don't know if he needs to be rostered at this point. And you tell me, Boy Green, the Jets aficionado here, one of the best covering the Jets from not a professional basis, but you might be professional enough. What are the odds that you think Breece Hall gets traded before the NFL trade deadline?
Well, ESPN did a top 25 piece of the best players that could be traded before the deadline. On each player, they had a trade percentage prediction. And they put 35%. That seems like a randomly arbitrary number thrown up in the air. I would say this. It's 60-40. To me, leaning towards Breece Hall being traded. The 40 of no, and the only reason that percentage is so high is Braylon Allen got hurt. He just confirmed he had surgery on his Instagram, which technically speaking, the surgery or non-surgical, he had the option himself to pick. Surgery just seems to indicate like it's sort of waving the white flag on the year for what they're going to be doing as opposed to trying to get back. So his non-existence, and for your hopefulness, Joe Bart, on your Isaiah Davis rostered spots of him suddenly being handed the keys to the franchise to this 0-7 Jets offense. I think that's the thing that the Jets are weighing here, because they have this game against the Bengals. Next week is the bye week. So, and that's going to encompass, of course, the NFL trade deadline. That's where they're staring themselves in the face. But apparently the most traded potential guy for fantasy purposes is Breece Hall on the New York Jets roster. So I think it's 60-40 lean towards him getting dealt.
Wow, did I just see Joe scraping some insider Jet information from Boy Green to try and find out if his roster was going to be okay going forward?
I would have put the number higher. That's where I was going with. Like, I feel like at 0-7, with how bad this team is, you don't have the contract extension down for Breece Hall. It didn't feel like they made a lot of headway during the offseason either. And I want to be clear, I think it's stupid. I think Breece Hall is one of the more talented running backs in the NFL. That the Jets are choosing to not do this is a very Jets thing to do. But also, I think it's a consequentially bad choice for this franchise. I just am, as someone that observes the NFL, follows this stuff closely, I think I do a pretty good job relative to a lot of people in the fantasy industry being aware of the contract situations and what that means in relation to team moves. And we're not just wish casting Alvin Kamara to be traded, but like, will it actually happen? That kind of thing. Breece Hall feels like the biggest asset on the trade deadline. And while the NFL is not the same as baseball, we know that if there is a surplus of one position, which there will be in running backs, you typically are going to, if you're a team out there in need of a Breece Hall, pay the premium because you know what you're getting out of that player. And I do think, whether it be the Chiefs or the Cowboys or Bears, if a team were to acquire Breece Hall, that negatively hurts his fantasy value. And I'm assuming that will happen. So when it's Breece Hall for a guy like Rachaad White, who this week is going to be at minimum running back 20 this week, or Dalton Kincaid, who I think is very much in the realm of like tight end 8-3 conversation, that's worth it to me for Breece Hall. And yes, I have Isaiah Davis in my roster because I do think he will be the guy that Braylon Allen has done for the year. Braylon Allen's not very good. I'm a UW Badger guy here. Like, we've watched him. Braylon Allen's not a very good football player. It's a benefit to you to be able to see what you have in Isaiah Davis, because Braylon Allen isn't that guy. And I do think that Isaiah Davis is one of those that I have wrote about now for a month, but on my waiver wire article, I talked about Isaiah Davis. If you can afford to speculate, I think it's a matter of time until Breece Hall is traded and Isaiah Davis becomes the starter in a very bad offense, but volume nevertheless.
All right, let's talk about Bye-Mageddon, Joe. I mean, it is Bye-Mageddon week. We've got, 6 teams on bye, a lot of rosters being depleted. I've seen it in some of my leagues. I'm so glad in the Champs League, I'm really only missing one of my starters. I'm feeling great this week. But my Chumps League team, it's like, who are these guys? I mean, it is a waiver wire cavalcade, my goodness. So how do you handle Bye-Mageddon? Is this something, again, we've talked about it. Is there any way to plan for this stuff in terms of when you're drafting, or do you just got to draft your team and then plan later on?
Yeah, I think I'm drafting the team. So your Bye-Mageddon was week 5. That's what I talked about. Like that. I think there's 3 starts. When you have multiple people on week 5 in a critical game, your advantage going through that before everyone else is that now rest of season, you don't have that in the way, that you only have one person on bye, when theoretically we're talking about 2 people or more in certain situations, coupled with all the injuries that happened. I think you have a major advantage if you get the bye week out of the way early, especially this week when there are 6 teams on bye. Now, to be fair, it's really like 4 consequential teams and then 2 teams that nobody really wants to roster anyway. And it might remove some headaches. Like example, Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jaguars, or if you're playing Travis Etienne, like I was in a couple leagues, now you don't have to make that mistake anymore. So there is a bit of that, but I mean, seriously, with as many injuries as we've seen to the receivers specifically, who are the position that's not supposed to have the injury attrition too, it's even more reinforcing in my mind that I'm drafting the team that I think will be best. And even if it matters that there's coinciding bye weeks that could make my 1 week frustrating, that means my guys got healthy to that point where that's a good deal for me. So I never really am trying to worry about that. There's been, I think, 1 league where it really crept up on me of the 17 I do. And I looked at them like, well, I'm probably going to lose this week, but boy, my team looks really good rest of season. And I don't mind that sort of consequence if we are kind of entering that premise with Bye-Mageddon this week.
Joe, am I screwed? Because I feared this when me and Manchild. Oh, just in general. Yes. Yeah. What is the answer to this? Yeah, I am. I feared this when first off, I should never make a deal with the devil, or in this case, Jim the Manchild Lerch, about a trade in fantasy. And we did a straight up trade. Well, we did do a straight up trade. It ended up having some extra kickers in there.
These weird tentacles on it.
Of Christian Kirk and, Jordan Mason in exchange to me for, what I ended up getting. Yes, honey, we'll have to do this later. Okay, sweetheart? I'm in the middle of fantasy over here. All right, I'm sorry. So long story short, let's just get to the brass tacks of it. It was basically Jordan Mason for Khalil Shakir with some extras crap thrown in between. And Lerch sold me the Sweet Siren song about like, hey man, I know that Aaron Jones guy is going to come back eventually, but pitch pause. Jordan Mason's going to be the lead guy. And I'm texting him like, I don't know, I'm not so sure. I think when Aaron Jones comes back, it's going to be a lot of issues for me. But he kept saying, no, definitely not. No way. And then the initial reaction, which has a double dip effect, right? So Jordan Mason sucks last night. He's got 1.6 points on Thursday Night Football. And I play you this week, so I'm sure you're like, sweet, that worked out for me. So be honest with me. Did I get screwed there? Is Jordan Mason going to be buried? Am I overreacting to a first sample size here of Aaron Jones' return? Because it's not like Aaron was great either.
Before you answer that, I want to say I actually did really believe that. That was not salesmanship. The way that Mason played last year in that role, the penchant for injury that Jones has, my thought, Joe, and I could still be right in the long run, but my thought was that they'll convert Jones now into the third down back, and they'll give Mason first and second downs and likely goal line carries, and I'd rather have that guy than the third down back. But give me your thoughts about how you think that's going to work out. You're green, you're from that neck of the woods, okay? So go ahead. I know Jones.
Yeah, NFC North conversation. I'm really good at that, yes. Specifically for one team with the Packers. No, at the time I thought the deal was fine. The part that we were always making jokes about was the Broncos versus Christian Kirk, but 1-for-1 Jordan Mason for Khalil Shakir. It was a small potatoes deal, but one that I thought makes sense for both parties. And at the time, Jordan Mason was the obvious preferred starter. Then we have the Carson Wentz. I think implosion's not the right word, but we kind of recognized what Carson Wentz was, even though it's Kevin O'Connell masking a lot of the flaws that he has. And I think that was the bigger issue. I got that game completely wrong last night. I thought it'd be basically the reverse, where the Vikings are putting the pressure on the Chargers, that the Chargers are going to have to pass to stay around. You're going to have Keenan Allen and Aronde Gadsden and Ladd McConkey get volume because that's the only way they're going to play catch up. But it was going to be the Vikings making plays with Jordan Addison, going to have Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones impact in the run game. And they never were able to establish that. I mean, it was like 14-0 before I blinked at that point, and it felt like the Vikings were playing catch up the entire way. Carson Wentz is not that kind of quarterback, and the scheme that Kevin O'Connell wants to run most effectively really is dependent on the running attack being established. That never happened in this game, whether it was Jordan Mason or otherwise. So you mentioned it, Lerch. I think that the big key for me is that Aaron Jones does get injured often. I hate to say that as a Packer fan. I still love my Aaron Jones. I think he's a really good player when healthy, and he'll make the football team of the Vikings better. But fantasy-wise, it might be a frustrating spot. The only issue is I don't really feel like Khalil Shakir's in a much better area either. Like, okay, great, he's a good 12 points in PPR leagues. That is useful. I do really value that. We talked about Alec Pierce as a trade candidate earlier. It would be great to have 12 points from Khalil Shakir every single week, but he really isn't doing much more than that. And there are weeks, even though you'd think the Bills are set up to be able to throw to Shakir more, that he doesn't get involved enough. So I thought it was a win-win trade for the most part at the time, even though we were enforcing bad behavior, rostering 55 defenses. And I still feel that way now, even though I am benefiting this week against me. Let's be clear. I will not jinx anything. I have wood on the table right now. Boy Green, your team is going to slaughter my team. You're going to annihilate me. Every one of your guys outside of Jordan Mason, they're scoring 50 points. I'm going to bow down to you after Monday when it's very clear that you won by 200 points. So this one little blip in the Thursday radar means nothing to me.
Nice. Yeah, real mature. Really appreciate that. You mentioned it, and we're based in the Syracuse area. So Aronde Gadsden, I mean, he's a guy that I loved because of Syracuse. We have our inherent biases with certain people. So I was like, man, I hope someone gets him. I felt really good about him. But I mean, I couldn't have possibly imagined that he would be putting up production that starts getting into, wow, did you know last week he had the third most yards ever for a rookie tight end in a game? I'm like, what? This random day 3 pick Syracuse product is making this kind of noise. So what is your temperature on Aronde Gadsden, and rest of season? Where does he stand as we talk about the tight end position all the time?
Hot. I'm hot for Aronde Gadsden. Maybe that's a band name we're gonna have a little bit later on. No, okay. So I'll give credit. I do like I was there for the NFL draft. This was by far the most NFL draft coverage before that I've ever done. But that's like my my birthday, Christmas. I love the NFL draft. I have been doing that for a number of years. I would say probably the reason that I'm at where I'm at in my career at RotoWire is because I'm consistently reliable and I provide good content for the NFL draft. I didn't think Oronde Gadsden would be this sort of player. But when Brian Drake had talked about him on one of the off-season podcasts, and I know he was influenced from a Syracuse perspective as well, but all it takes is somebody who I believe and I think is smart to have that conversation and present some information in front of my eyes and then think, well, wait, it's the Chargers are running through Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst last year. There is no reason we talk about draft capital mattering all the time in dynasty leagues. There's no reason an early day 3, because he was a 5th round pick, an early day 3 guy can't push out the Tyler Conklins of the world that got smaller deals, or Will Dissly, who was always last year supposed to be the blocking specialist and then was kind of elevated to that role when they had a bunch of other injuries. So I had been in and around Gadsden. Then he was healthy and active the first 2 weeks. I hate when the coaches do that dumb stuff where there's a clearly talented player, but they have to earn their way. That happens a lot in the NBA. And I remember Mike Zimmer doing that for Justin Jefferson his rookie year too, and it was like, what are you doing? Chad Beebe was getting snaps or whatever it was for the Vikings instead. I had Oronde Gadsden was my top waiver wire pickup this week when we did the Monday show, and even last week I think he ended up being on my number 3 list as well. So I had been in on Oronde Gadsden, I think, relative to a lot of people, but Brian Drake had got that one right pretty much immediately when Gadsden was more involved. And what I had thought was going to be the push to make him fantasy relevant was all the offensive line injuries the Chargers are dealing with prior to Thursday. The Chargers were down to their 4th string tackle at various points in that loss to the Colts on both sides. And the way to combat that is get the ball out quick, throw the ball to Lab McConkey, Keenan Allen, and Oronde Gadsden, who's already out there blocking anyway. I thought Gadsden specifically would be good in that scenario because he's great after the catch. What I was not planning for was single high splits where you're throwing it to him and he does a 50-yard run after the catch. Like that was oh, wow, Gadsden can be that guy and Herbert trusts him to be that guy. And we saw it in the red zone last night as well, too, where it was a one-on-one coverage. He gets the inside leverage, easy pitch and catch touchdown. I think Gadsden, in my mind, is anywhere in the range of tight end 5 to 8 rest of season. Like he will be in my lineup. I have him in a bunch of places. Unfortunately, not this league, which is sharp on Syracuse guys. I will have him in my lineup every single week moving forward. Herbert is playing well. They're using him not just as an extension to block or to help give coverage to the offensive line, but as a weapon in that offense. And to me, when that guy gets the ball in his hands, special things happen. You want as many of those on the football field as possible.
I'll give you a little extra on Gadsden, Joe, a little bit of Syracuse insider stuff in terms of what he did in college. 2 things. Number one, he did have some issues staying healthy, so that could be something with him going forward. The other thing is at Syracuse, even though they called him a tight end, he basically was a slot receiver, and he lined up in the slot a lot, and he could do all kinds of things, and he was terrific after the catch, which is why Syracuse loved to get him the ball. So those were 2 skills that he definitely had in college, and he obviously has brought them to the pros. And let's face it, the guy has pedigree. I mean, his dad played in the NFL and was good. So, I mean, the guy, it's one of those kids, you grow up as the ball kid, but you're around your dad, and I'm sure he did all that. And when you have that pedigree, sometimes, it's the old like coach's son, player's son. All of a sudden, you have some advantages. There's some things that you've seen that other people haven't seen. So even if you're young, that experience is still in there, so to speak. You know what I mean?
That class of tight ends is really interesting because you have Tyler Warren, who's going to be right up there in terms of fantasy leaders at the position. Colston Levitt was a top 10 pick. I actually do think starting now with Cole Kmet, I'm assuming not playing this week, Colston Loveland is going to be having fantasy relevant weeks moving forward. Yet you had a lot of the tweener guys like Elijah Arroyo drew a lot of attention, and Arroyo's been actually fine enough for what he is as rookie tight end. And it was Harold Fannin and Gadsden who were undersized tight ends that were very productive in college. And what is that supposed to look like in the NFL level? They literally went to the 2 perfect scenarios, right? Where Harold Fannin goes to the Browns, who could only throw 5-yard in routes every single play. And then Oronde Gadsden, who has a coach that wants to use him as a weapon after the catch, which I think is best suited. Like if you're having Oronde Gadsden be a field stretcher like Mark Andrews, that would be fine. You could do that. Or I think back to the Robert Tonyan years with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. I think Gadsden can be really good at that. But what I love to see, and it doesn't happen enough, which is why I love to see it, is when coaches specifically use the talent they have to make their offensive schemes better, as opposed to making their offensive schemes fit with those players themselves. I think that's why Gadsden, like I said, I value Gadsden. Somebody was sending a bunch of trade offers for Dallas Goedert earlier this week. I think Dallas Goedert could be like a drop candidate, even though he's been scoring touchdowns. Aranda Gadsden's like the inverse of that. Aranda Gadsden's a guy that I want to have on every roster if I possibly can.
It's amazing because in our two lower leagues, well, I shouldn't say two lower leagues because we have three other leagues, but in the Chumps League and the Triple C League, which I participate in both, Gadsden was available after last week. I went out on waiver wire, even though I don't really need tight end help. And I was like, I'm getting this guy. Picked him up in one league, played him because of Bimageddon, and look at what I got last night. I nearly got him in the other league. I was one slot away from getting him in the other league. Or I could have had him in 2 out of the 3 leagues. Who has him in our league, Boy Green? Do you know off the top of your head who has
a Champs League?
Yeah.
It's Drake. Drake is
he had him like the past month before.
We had no chance at him, right?
Yeah, he was floating around, though. He got dropped, and then he came. I saw him floating around a little bit. But again, when you don't have need a tight end, you're not really paying attention to tight end. But I thought that was fascinating. All right, today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Box Drop Syracuse. We'll take questions when we return. Let's just take 30 seconds, learn a little bit more about our friends from Box Drop.
Considering that we sleep nearly 1/3 of our lives, buying the right mattress is essential. At Box Drop Syracuse Mattress and Sofa Outlet, you'll get a unique experience, one that saves you 30 to 70% off retail prices on top-of-the-line mattresses like Sapphire Sleep. At Box Drop, you'll schedule a mattress fitting appointment and get one-on-one service directly with Paul, the owner. No middleman. Family-owned, huge savings, no-pressure sales designed to save you time and money. And now Box Drop Syracuse has sectional sofas and love seats as well, with prices designed to fit your budget. Box Drop Syracuse Mattress and Sofas. Set up your appointment today at boxdropsyracuse.com.
All right, we are back with our Friday Fantasy Football segment, Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital. Hit the little subscribe button right now. Become a subscriber. You can win a $400 golf club donated by our friends at Play It Again Sports. It's Joe Bartle from RotoWire. You see him right there on the screen. Boy Green along with us as well as we're talking fantasy football. Get in the comments right now. Start, sit, trades, anything you want. Joe Bartle will give you his expert advice on it. Joe, I'll kick it off with this one. You guys won't know what this means, but Bill, the produce guy, says, Manchild, I guess I should have taken your trade offer. We're both in the Triple C League, myself and Bill, the produce guy. And I was telling Boy Green this, just kind of, dare I say, for sentimentality a little bit. I was like, you know what? I'm going to see what I can do here. As you know, my fantasy team name this year, Joe, is Stairway to Evans. And I do not have Mike Evans on any of my teams. And I was like, you know, I'm going to see. I'm going to do a little hunting. I think Evans could have a good second half of the year. Let me see if there's some people that make sense where maybe I could make a very equal trade and just bring Evans over where he belongs under his name.
Just for the name, right.
So I look down in the Triple C. Sure, I see he's on Bill the Produce guys. And I've got, hey, I got a little relationship with Bill. Let me reach out to him, see if maybe he'd make a swap or something. I forget who I offered him, but it was a very equal trade. I wasn't trying to gain anything on him. I wasn't trying to trick him in any way. I was just like, I'm interested in getting Evans on my squad. Could we do it? And he ends up going, yeah, you know, let's just wait another week or so, you know, let's not do it, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, what happens. I would have screwed myself, essentially. So that's what he's talking about there.
This is a really good
stuff like that.
Really good launching point for a conversation that I like planned for today. I'll probably talk on the Sirius XM as well, too. So we ran into this a few times. CeeDee Lamb, for example, was a guy that had been on injured reserve for a couple of weeks. You have Mike Evans, of course. Rashee Rice suspended for 6 weeks. We're going to have this as well, too, with JSN and St. Brown on bye this week during Bimageddon. I think there are certain leagues and certain people that are really, really open to making those moves when you have that. But I would assume, and I'm this way, so I have to assume there's probably like 80% of the other people playing fantasy football. If I have to sit through whatever this duration of time is until I get return on my investment, right? And that's really what this is from a fantasy perspective with the Lamb and Mike Evans injuries and Rashee Rice especially. It's great. Like, go ahead and make offers, and they can be good. I'm not even saying they're not good offers. I want to see the return on my investment, right? Like I have sat through multiple weeks. You guys didn't have to sit here through with Lamb on bye week and me shuttling through receivers or Mike Evans, for example, right? During that hamstring stuff. Like, I want to be able to see this actually happen for my fantasy team. So it adds up. Let's just say like a 2% kicker on the trade. Like, if you're not willing to buy out my frustration of having this player out for a month, then I won't be willing to do the trade. And it's so fascinating because I think it's a perfect example of what happened Monday night. We're waiting for Mike Evans to make an impact. He should have a great matchup against the Lions. Baker Mayfield didn't play all that good. And then you watch him concussed, wobbling off the field, and you're like, oh my God, why didn't I just make that move? And conversely, Rashee Rice, I thought would get kind of slowly worked in the offense. Heck no, he got 17 targets. Here's 2 touchdowns, and the Chiefs just killed the Raiders right away. It's like, oh, that's why I waited for Rashee Rice for 6 weeks. And I don't know what the duality of that is. I think it truly is a person by person thing. Like, Bill, the produce guy could have been like, I like Mike Evans. I drafted him this week, but whatever this offer is fair. Like, I'm a little bit nervous. Hamstring injuries, like a soft tissue thing, can always reappear. And of course, that wasn't the injury that happened, but I'm having that a little bit with Lamar Jackson right now in my redraft leagues, where he should be able to play this week. At least Vegas certainly thinks so. I know you guys will do the NFL picks in a little bit. There is zero reason that Vegas should have the Ravens favored as high as they are, unless Lamar Jackson's going to be able to play. And I think, okay, well, if he's getting rushed out there because there's still limited participant in practice the past 2 weeks, this soft tissue thing, Lamar's a one-of-one athlete, but what if I could just get equal value to where I drafted him and not have to worry about this rest of the season? Like, this is a really real thing that I think a lot of people in fantasy should be thinking about if they aren't already.
Yeah, I would think so too. By the way, a quick shout out. I see Craig Hatch and Denise Walters jumping in on the old YouTube membership group. So thank you, Craig and Denise. You guys can also get your questions rolling here. So feel free. That is absolutely terrific here on the show. Let me get one in here. Yes, Jamie the FedEx guy, maybe explaining one of the trades perhaps. Hall gets traded to Texans. That'd be good for me. They already had their bye week, and Rashad White after his week 9 bye week to end week 10 to end of season, more than likely going back-to-back running backs. Jamie explaining he's going to be turning this season around. Joe, your thoughts?
Well, I've talked about, I felt like the Dwight Schrute method of the paperclip to the house has been working really well. I know that was a loss last week, but I still think there's multiple teams worse than Jamie's team on there. That was not a Freudian slip. Well, I guess, yeah. But I like the trade was totally balanced in my mind. And from Courtney's perspective, you need to have 2 starters this week. It's the reason why I try to offer, I thought a Godfather offer for Amon-Ra St. Brown, same sort of deal. And at that point, like how valuable is staying in the league relative to what is a top player that will help somebody win? I think that's a question that a lot of people are going to have answered for the next 2 weeks with, again, 4 teams I buy of consequence next week too.
All right, there's another question. Badshaw. Joe, I need a receiver to pick up. I was one of those Mike Evans owners, and any other receiver, and my other receiver is doubtful. For people that are scrounging through the waiver wire, although the waiver wire is passed, so just free agency, I suppose, and they're trying to look for options. So where should these people go, Joe?
So it's incredibly brutal on like a per name basis, unfortunately. So Badshaw should message me on JB Fantasy Sports, maybe send a screenshot of the waiver wire, because it's going to be individually easier for me to answer those. And I made the case in the waiver wire article I posted Monday too. Well, it's the RotoWire Discord, JB Fantasy Sports on Twitter. Like I'll do the SiriusXM shows on Saturday where I do a lot of phone call-ins. Your waiver wire will look different than what mine is, or the other ones as well too. So I'll rattle through the names of guys that I had to be like, I guess we should talk about this week. Malik Washington got 8 targets for the Dolphins in that monsoon game against the Browns. Is that because Jalen Waddle could be traded? Was he getting phased out? Or is that Tua not being able to throw the ball with the wind? I would say towards the latter. And while Malik Washington, if he gets 8 targets, that matters consequentially. If they're all behind the line of scrimmage, which most of them were, it's not great. The next guy on the list was Josh Reynolds, your guy, right, for a receiver for the Jets. And if Garrett Wilson didn't play, I thought Garrett Wilson would be out multiple weeks. Now, it sounds like he's trending towards possibly playing. And if that's the case, then I don't want anything to do with any other receiver, but Josh Reynolds is one of them as well. And last week already, people are speculating on Tez Johnson or Cameron Johnson, the Buccaneers, with Mike Evans now out. If you capitalized on the Tez Johnson part of things, that was probably the top waiver wire pickup and might not be available because people thought Emeka Egbuka might not play or everything else. So it's been really unfortunate with the injuries and like how to juxtapose that with a bunch of the bye weeks and also the stuff that's happening at the top of the wide receiver group. It really is bleak. Again, just reach out to me and I'll try to give you like the specific answers. Alec Pierce is often available. He's a guy that I pick up, but it really is a tough week, unfortunately.
Joe, a couple others here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain to Badshaw and anyone else. Joe said it, but just to repeat it again, it's at JB Fantasy Sports. Joe is tremendous on social media of responding to fans. I'm seeing it all the time when people tweet at him or DM him or go or reach out to him on other social media. I agree. Sometimes just saying blanket names that aren't going to be available and across these leagues is a biggie. So again, Badshaw, that is at JB Fantasy Sports. Go ahead.
All right, so you can do that. All right, a couple here from Big Al, one of our league guys. He says, losing Evans and Puka on a bye needed the depth at wide receiver, and it's not like I'll play Caleb over Josh Allen.
The trade.
Perfect example. Yeah, and I talked about Big Al. He was the one that's sending Dallas Goedert out. But to be clear, like I don't value Dallas Goedert that way, but there's zero reason why you can't have Dallas Goedert be turned into an asset that helps your team. But if Alec Pierce is a perfect example where like that can be a guy that you could play this week. In our league, I think we're really sharp, and it helps that there's 2 of the 10 members of the league that are very active and aware of the waiver wire every single week. And in the case of Brian Drake's example, shuttling through guys even during loopholes I weren't think were possible in the Sunday and Monday night kind of games too. Like it's just really tough to find value when the league is as sharp as I think the Champs League is with that. So maybe offering those types of deals, you might quote unquote lose the trade, but if it helps your team and helps your team for multiple weeks, who cares? And that's exactly the reason, like, right. Okay, Caleb Williams might not play over Josh Allen. Absolutely agree. Can you get something more for Caleb Williams? Well, what if you've asked 9 other members of the league? And the answer is no. Like it's your Denver Broncos defense, for example. You might think the Denver Broncos defense is worth something. It's not. But if you've talked to 8 other members of the league and they've all said no, then they have told you what that value is anyway. So I think the Caleb Williams, especially when you have Josh Allen, it's a perfect example of just do what's best for your team, even if like the trade charts would say you have lost it.
And then what about this follow-up from Al here, the impact of Christian Watson fantasy-wise once he returns? Do you expect him to be a guy that people could start, I guess really is the question.
Yeah, so he's going to make his debut, at least that's what it sounds like, and I think the Packers will work him back very slowly. Like maybe if he plays more than 15 snaps, that would be all I expect. I think it'll help Matthew Golden in the end of the year. I think if Jaden Reed comes back as well too, having that full complement of different utility weapons for that Packers attack is great, but it does not mean Christian Watson is getting a lot of volume. I don't know how desperate I would need to be to play Christian Watson, but that's literally as desperate as I think I can go. Like I went through a bunch of waiver wire names on Monday that I was like, I hope I never have to play any one of these guys, and Watson's somehow below that group. Not that you can't have him rest of season, but I just would not be playing him this week. I think he only plays like 10 or 12 snaps.
All right, Johnny Boy jumping in with this one. Should I pick up Darius Slayton? I have every wide receiver that you can think of injured, I guess. Or
another great example of maybe if Johnny could send me something on JB Fantasy Sports of what that waiver wire would look like. I don't mind Darius Slayton. I would say he's probably like wide receiver 50 in that range for me this week. That sounds egregious or gross. That might be what people have to do. Like starting wide receiver 50 might be how it is, or like Troy Franklin or Marvin Mims was a hot waiver wire pickup in a lot of my like sharper leagues. And I don't want to play either one of those guys very often. So maybe Sterling Shepard over Darius Slayton now with Mike Evans out, or like we're talking about Tez Johnson. I don't mind Darius Slayton, but there might be better options as well out there too.
All right, let's go to another one here. Old Yank, Mason Taylor over David Njoku.
Yeah, and I don't know if David Njoku plays this week. I thought the emergence of Mason Taylor, what I thought he would be right away from the season, really happened when Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback in one of those many games where Justin Fields got banged up. And I still am of the belief, especially if Garrett Wilson is out there, you look at that Bengals defense, they are susceptible to everything. If you just have a competent quarterback in a scheme that can move the ball down the field passing, you're going to have production this week. So I will play Mason Taylor, even if David Njoku is healthy.
By the way, just a quick note on Mason Taylor. You always hate seeing this. When you see the injury report and you see that the first day is hyphen, they're like, oh, so they weren't injured that day. But a new injury came up. Mason Taylor popped up on the injury report on Thursday with a quad. So that means he got injured somewhere between the end of practice on Wednesday and the beginning of practice on Thursday. So that's always disconcerting. But again, keep an eye out for that. We'll get a Friday injury report later today. So, keep an eye out for that one.
Give us your newest one here. Let me just slip down here. Let me just grab this comment. What about Jackson Dart and where you stand on him right now, Joe? You said a few weeks. Obviously,
couldn't have been more wrong.
Pretty good. Mm-hmm. What do you think about Dart right now?
Couldn't have been more wrong. Again, Brian Drake had mentioned this. It was around the same time as Rondé Gadsden on the waiver wire. And he had made it a thing, and I was like, God, I love you, Brian. Don't be that guy. Don't put your face so forward on this. Like, you have 2 Eagles matchups. You have the Niners, you have the Broncos. There's no way this guy is going to be that successful, that guy being Jackson Dart. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Now, I still think there are limitations for Jackson Dart as a quarterback, like in the NFL. And we've seen them crop up against the Saints. We saw him in the fourth quarter against the Broncos as well, too. That's not to mean that Jackson Dart's not a good quarterback at all. But I think for what he can be for this offense, there's still some warts. Fantasy-wise, though, he is fantastic. And what he did through this stretch, which I think is probably one of the hardest a rookie could do, to then have what I think is a very easy rest of season schedule, Jackson Dart is firmly in that Daniel Jones tier, Caleb Williams tier. I would be playing both those guys over Kyler Murray, for example. Like, we're talking about low-end quarterback one. I don't want to give up an asset for Jackson Dart, but I do think Jackson Dart, rest of season, very much qualifies as a quarterback that you could stream each and every week if we want to.
All right, let's finish off these last fan questions, and then we got to get Joe out of here. He's a very busy and popular and handsome, serious radio host, for God's sakes. Albert jumping in. He, by the way, has Mason Taylor, and we just mentioned the injury update. He said, I might have to switch to Gunnar Helm or Colston Loveland.
Loveland, absolutely play Loveland. Like Cole Kmet didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. You have the Ravens defense, which I think gets back Roquan Smith, but they have been brutal against the pass. I think Colston Loveland is going to break out very soon, and I'll be very happy to pick him up and play him this week. Even if it's 4 catches for 50 yards, 9 points in a full point PPR league is totally fine as a waiver wire tight end. And I think Loveland has a lot of rest of season potential as well, too.
All right, and last one here, I just see Badshaw saying, BG, you're going down in the Boy Green Coffee Club League. We have a league for all our crazy Jet fans in there. And he's saying 41%, so you're saying there's a chance. I'm just curious, turning this into a question, Joe, what do you make of the percentages, right? We always sort of, I don't know if everyone does. Right. Yeah, projections of like, so Thursday night. Right, really right. Good. So like Thursday night happened, Jordan Mason sucks. So obviously you were already projected to smack me around, but it just dramatically got bigger because of how Jordan Mason performed. What do you make of those projections of people being on the edge of their seat as things are happening on Sunday? And then there's just these dramatic swings of like, 99% chance, 60% chance. And it's just very dramatic. And I'm like,
I knew you were going to ask me this because I knew I was favored 60-40 to begin the week. Again, Boy Green, your team's all going to score 50 on me. I have no chance at winning this one. Yeah. I'm going to bow down to how great your team did on Monday. You won't catch me in any sort of things otherwise. But for everyone else, those projections are meaningless. Like we said, a lot of those stuff, like it's based off of certain stuff. And how often it changes. We are not in any of the game, like the game planning offensive meetings across the league. So there's no way for us to know if Aranda Gadsden's going to be featured in the red zone this week, or if it's going to end up being Trey Harris that gets his first touchdown in the NFL or whatever. Like we don't know any of that stuff. So it's based off of how we thought they would do on a cumulative level over the course of the season. And while I think our marks do a really good job of hitting that by the end of the year, what happens week to week is just nonsense. So Boy Green, your team's going to go crazy. You're going to have an awesome week. You'll be able to overcome that 1 point from Jordan Mason very, very easily because you guys are going for 180. But everyone else, the projection stuff is very meaningless.
All right, Joe. Kick his butt, Joe. Kick his butt. I want you to win this week, man. It's more space for me. I want some breathing room up there in the top. It's just, I just want a little more breathing room. Boy, Green's breathing down my neck. I can't, deal with him being in front of me in the standings. Imagine what this will be like every Friday. My goodness. All right, Joseph, always great to talk to you. Thanks for answering all the questions, Joe. We'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, happy to be on with you guys. Thanks, everyone.
All right. There he goes. Joe Bartle, rotowire.com. And again, you can pick him up on the radio on Sirius XM Fantasy Radio. What time is it? I'm not sure what time his show is. I should get all the intel.
I believe that's coming up at noon. I believe.
I think you're right. I think he does jump on at noon. So anyway, we'll get you all the deets on Joe's shows, and we can always throw them up in the comments for you folks so that you know when you can listen to Joe. But he also does a lot of guest spots too. I catch him a lot of times, interacting with other fantasy hosts on the fantasy sports channel there, fantasy sports radio channel. So not only does he do some time where he's sitting in the host chair and co-hosting a show, but then he also comes into some of the other shows and gives some advice as well. And obviously he shows up here every week for us. So Joe's a great, great guy. We've been working with him. How many years, BG? I mean,
almost a decade. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, since we've been doing fantasy football coverage,
2017. So
I think we just lucked out, like Joe was like a young neophyte when we first got him, and now he's a grizzled veteran.
Big wig at RotoWire.
Really respected. I think he does a tremendous job. Other than he can't beat either one of the two of us in fantasy, it seems. That's he's got that weakness, and
hopefully that continues.
We just got it over him. I love it.
Yeah. And last one here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Jump into another question. I know there was another question or two. We try to get into Joe before he gets out, but go ahead.
Yeah, I will get to this. This has nothing to do with fantasy. Okay. Just my Boston Celtics are going to kick your New York Knicks ass tonight. So I just want you to know that it's happening. So the better garden, we all know what it is. So I just want to make sure we don't. There's no NBA world currently that we're swimming in. So the only way I could get this to you is by yelling it to you during a fantasy football segment.
The last few years have been rough, as you know, for my Knicks, just in terms of against the Celtics and what the Celtics present
historically, right?
But the worm has turned, as you know. The worm has turned. Okay. Your injury, the team's injuries, everything that you have. So
Mike Brown.
Quite enjoy the regular season against the Celtics this year. I usually don't. I usually cringe, hide under the table, look with one eye, that kind of thing when they play the Celtics. I don't think I'm going to have to do that. It'll be both eyes on the television tonight for sure.
All right, fair enough. Let's get a couple of fantasy questions in here. I see Batcha here. I picked up the 49ers defense this week. Do we think it's a good pickup, and will they be consistent throughout the year? Again, I think Robert Sala's been making chicken salad out of chicken. You know
He has.
what?
Yep.
The injuries continue to pile up from Fred Warner to Nick Bosa. I mean, they just keep coming. I would say, obviously you'd like a defense that isn't going through those kind of injuries. But if you were to believe a soothsayer and believe someone that just seems to have the right temperature and is making that chicken salad out of chicken, you know what? Robert Sala's a great guy to believe in. Look at what they've been able to do. You got to weigh in, of course, strength of schedule. That's another factor that plays in. But I thought the 49ers defense in a general sense has been really solid this year, especially considering all the injuries too. So I think that is a savvy pickup. I know the roster percentage is hovering between like 30 and 35% in Yahoo leagues. Anyway, it's different between leagues, but I wouldn't overreact to that. I'd be making your own temperature checks, and it seems like you have a good one with San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, my take with San Francisco is I think they're a solid D, and obviously Saleh has done a really, really good job. But I'm not rolling with them the rest of the year, if that's what you're asking me, Badshaw. I think
Right.
I think you'd be better off streaming defenses,
Yes.
and when it's right, you play the 49ers defense, and I wouldn't just necessarily keep them as well and then play them only weeks, but they're respectable. But I would look at each matchup, and if this one's, next week's not a good one, then you dump the Niners and you go get a good defense out there. You go to the waiver wire and you try and get yourself a better defense. I did that the whole beginning of this year. Boy Green and I, as you know, because Joe just keeps talking about it and talking about it. He can't stop talking about it. But he did trade me the Denver defense. I'm going to probably roll with the Denver defense for the most part the rest of this year. I mean, I just like the defense, and I think they can get the job done. I may get burned doing that because I was doing very well streaming defenses, but I actually think that Denver is one of the best defenses in football, and I think it's, things kind of do, a team gets due, and I think that this Denver defense could have some big weeks in the future, and that's what you want to get. You want solid all the time, and every once in a while a pop, and that's what I think Denver can do, and not every defense can do that, but if you play the matchup, sometimes you can just get pop after pop, so it's just how do you want to do it? Do you want to go to that waiver wire every single week?
Totally concur. Again, stream defenses if you don't have one of the best ones in the league, and obviously the betcha, that's the waters you're swimming in. Yes, who are the Steelers playing this week? It's a game of the week, Sunday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers' return against playing his old team. That is the Green Bay Packers coming up in there. And then shout out to Old Yank. He picked up the Chargers defense, and they did work last night against that Minnesota Vikings team and Carson Wentz. So congratulations to you. And then
if you watch the beginning of that game, you wonder if that pick six that had gone the other way, all right, like if that happens, if that guy does, if that's ruled a catch, and it was darn close to it,
Isaiah Rodgers
ruled a catch, and that becomes a pick six,
how does the game change?
Whole game changes
totally,
because now not only does it give it back to the Chargers, then the Chargers march 85 yards down the field and score
14-point swing. Yeah,
and it was just that was again. The Chargers outplayed them, deserved to win that game, won it handily. I just wonder if that went down, how that changes the entire course of that game. Could have.
1,000%. I agree. And last one here, Lerch. It isn't fantasy related, but Johnny Boy asked you about the Jets situation. Why are the Jets doing so bad, and are you on the train to get rid of first-year coach Aaron Glenn?
It's bad. I mean, there's no sugarcoat.
Yeah.
I mean, because the Jets, it's not even just 0-7. Teams can go 0-7. Teams can have bad years. It's what it looks like. We saw this years ago for Syracuse football. They brought in a coach named Greg Robinson. This goes back a way. And I was like, what is going on? They don't know how to function between the penalties, which the Jets are similar, the impromptu bad turnovers at the wrong moments, bad clock management, bad play calling from time to time. Just like, what are they trying to accomplish here? And the Jets have had a little bit of that look. I'm not there yet on Aaron Glenn because I believe that whoever turns this Jets thing around needs to have a Jet pedigree. And I love that he does. And it would just be a beautiful story if he could turn it around. And I also do know, and you could it's over and over and over and over again. There have literally been legendary coaches who have had horrific first seasons and have been able to turn it around and turn it into something. Now, can this guy do it? I don't know, but I just don't know enough about Aaron Glenn, the head coach. We've seen him as an assistant coach and it looked pretty decent, but can he do it as a head coach? But I do think he gets the Jets thing, so I still remain rooting for him, but it's getting harder and harder and harder every week. I'm also a big believer, Johnny Boy, in continuity. I like continuity. I hate teams that are just constantly next. That doesn't work. You have to try to stay the course with some people. Look, you made the hire. You believed in him. So, you got to believe for a little while. You can't just believe for 7 games and say, I'm out of here. I mean, things have to go Things are going cryptically wrong, but things have to go so wrong for you to get to that point where after a year you'd let a coach go. So I'm still hanging in there, but I just hope we see signs in the latter part of this year from the Jets that would give us some hope that it's worth looking at Glenn for at least another half a year or a year before you say, all right, you can't get this guy. You can't get these guys to play together. But the penalties are bothering me a lot.
They've cleaned that up recently, though. So that's
the last couple games, and the defense is playing better. Which we were like, what is wrong with this defense? We knew they had some problems on offense and some lack of continuity, but what's wrong with the defense? Defense actually has been playing better. So, time. Let's wait on that. I'm not ready to profess. So if you have to ask me today, I'm still saying keep Glenn, and I'm still staying the course. That's where I stand.
As am I. Two things here. Again, Jets have 10 games left in their season, so that's a lot of time. Yep. And number two, the Jets have this game. They have bye week. They come out of the bye. Who is Aaron Glenn as a coach? Is he able to make significant changes during the bye? And I mean like adjustments of trying to get his team back on the right track, and they start stacking things together. So time left, and there's a bye coming up. Let's evaluate first half of season versus second half of season. He's totally not going to get fired in the middle of the year. Woody Johnson just did that for the first time ever. That's definitely not happening this time at a minimum. So that means he's going to have a second half of season to judge. Let's see how he does.
And the other thing is, if they do become sellers at the trade deadline, and all indications are that they will, now we'll see how much they sell.
Yeah.
If they do trade Hall and they do trade another piece or two, do you really expect Glenn with that roster? Any coach, Tom Landry with that roster would be like, I can't get a win. He's going to have a bad roster for the rest of this year if they jettison off the few decent guys that they have. So
that's part of the ethos too.
It's just a bad spot for him right now. It's going to be, I think it's going to be predicated on what happens in the offseason and next year. And then a decision will be made about Aaron Glenn. But I don't think it'll come any sooner than that. And even though Woody's a bad owner, even he has to be smart enough to do that, I think.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Plus, who's the answer? It's always like the next guy, but then who is it?
Yeah, of course.
Who's the guy? Who's the answer? So that's always the bigger problem is, okay, get rid of one guy. Who's the guy that's coming in that's the savior? You're looking for a savior right now. Is there one out there? I don't know. Last time I saw him, it was back, a long time ago when Jesus was walking here. That's the last savior I've seen. I haven't seen too many other saviors. So, miracles, wave the wand and miracles. All right, Boy Green. Well, I got a busy weekend. I'm off and traveling this weekend.
Safe travels.
South to North Carolina.
There you go.
For a big wedding. But we'll be back at it again next week. And we've got football picks coming out in just a little bit, so keep your eye out for that. We'll have our NFL picks segment. Always want to check.
That is now out, actually.
Oh, it's out already. Okay, fantastic.
Boom. There you
picks out. Okay, fantastic. So enjoy that as well, and plenty more content coming your way throughout the weekend. We'll drop some shorts, and there'll be plenty of stuff coming again next week. Everybody, thanks for a great week. I hope you have a fabulous weekend. Enjoy all the football. Good luck in fantasy, and we'll see you live on Monday. Take care.